And every day, I practice martial arts.
Watch out!
Vienna_Kung Fu from Instagram. Hi, Brandon here.
Got it.
All right. I live in Vienna, Austria, but I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan.
Sorry
Okay.
to hear that. Sorry to hear that.
My question is, what do you think are the major differences between the European approach to Kung Fu training and the American approach to Kung Fu training, Wing Tsun, etc.?
Yeah. So obviously, I don't know much about how the other Kung Fu styles train in Europe. All right. Wing Chun is obviously probably one of the most practiced, if not the most practiced, Kung Fu style in Europe, let's just say. But obviously, there are other Kung Fu. There's other Kung Fu that's practiced there as well. Mm-hmm. So I can only speak about Wing Chun, and I can only speak about WT because I don't know how the Wong Sun Leung guys train. I don't know how the other guys train. I don't. So I can't speak. So again, when I say something like this, someone is going to come from a different lineage, but yeah, this is not how we train at all. So I mean, I cannot speak. I cannot speak for all of it. All I could say is, and even when we talk about Europe, I mean, Europe is also a pretty varied place. So let's just say German. Okay, the German approach, because I cannot speak about the approach from Spain. I cannot speak about the approach from Portugal. I can only assume that they might be a little bit different than the German approach. So Germans are very analytical and they're very logical. All right, that's why they build such amazing cars. And Wing Chun, from what I understand, the main focus has always been self-defense, right? How do you protect yourself, right? The Chinese actually don't focus on that. And that's not to say that they don't do it or they don't practice it. But when you learn, let's say you grew up in the 80s in Hong Kong and you want to learn Wing Chun, you do it because you want to learn this martial art. And you want to learn this martial art because it's going to improve your abilities as a person. And you're also going to learn, presumably, how to fight, how to defend yourself, and you're going to become stronger. So you do it for all these like reasons, because like the art, because you know your uncle introduced you to the sifu, so there's maybe some familial pressure.
Right.
But a lot of Chinese who practice kung fu, they don't have these super deep they don't have a super deep why they do it. They do it. It's almost like it's part of the cogs of the wheels of their culture, right?
Okay.
But a German, they will do it specifically because I need to defend myself, and this is the thing I have a problem, and this is the solution. And so that's why in many respects, a lot of the things in Wing Chun that are really, really good for self-defense were developed to a higher level in Europe, because that's just one part of the pie for a lot of the Hong Kong peeps. Like, if someone, Siva Leung Ting, like, he would teach us the chi sao and the punching and the fighting and all that kind of stuff. And occasionally someone would have a question like, Sigong, what do you do if someone puts you like in a bear hug or something like that? Like some, let's say, self-defense oriented question, right? And then he would show this like brilliant thing from Buji with like the final, the bowing move. You see this thing like, wow, it's really cool. And then I look at some of my jujitsu buddies and it's like, it's pretty much the same as what they're doing, right? And I go, wow. And then he would show it and say like, okay, that's what you do. Okay. And then let's go back to Chi Sao.
Keep it moving. Yeah.
Yeah. You see what I mean? So he would like show this brilliant escape out of something, right? And then, and then you go back. So it was there, but it wasn't emphasized. So that meant that a lot of let's say the Hong Kong students might have learned these things maybe once or twice, but they didn't drill it again and again and again. And the European guys, because they focus so much on self-defense, they want to make sure you can really, really do it. But on the other hand, sometimes I think there's certain parts of the martial art that you just have to come and you have to train and you have to be present and you have to do it. And it's not always clear now why you have to do this thing. But after a couple of years, you start to go, oh, that's why I was doing this, and it pays dividends. The Germans, they're not going to do that until you give them a reason first. Oh. You understand? So that's why sometimes it's like, you go to Hong Kong, your Sifu says, okay, do this, and then you just do it.
You just do it. Yeah.
And you do it again, and then they correct you, and then the harder you work, the more they're going to then reveal to you on the back end. That's not all Sifus, but this is, let's say, my experience. But the Germans are like, no, why? Tell me why first, and then I'll invest the time in it, right? And so what ends up happening is that sometimes if you're a beginner, even if I told you why, it won't fully make sense. It might, and I'm not saying this to be mystical. The reason might be somewhat abstract. Ooh. But it makes sense if you've done that thing for 6 months and then you go, oh, now I understand how my hip can move when I put it into the punch, right? But if I told you at the beginning, you're doing this to improve the way you add the hip into the punch, they might go, But if you tell them you do this because if someone grabs you and does X, Y, Z, this is how you're going to get out. So sometimes they need a practical reason to do everything. And there's certain things in Chinese Kung Fu that are developmental. It's not for a straight one-to-one application. All right. You need to just do it so that you have the physical conditions to perform the Kung Fu. And that is sometimes not very easily communicated to people who are highly logical.
Man.
And that's all I got to say about that.
Man. All right. What are the differences between European/Hong Kong, your method of teaching?
This is very similar to the other question we had, right?
Yeah,
the difference
we
between
just had that.
See, a lot of people like to ask that question, right? Well, I mean, I teach, so this question is slightly different because it's asking, okay, how do I teach it? The other one was like a difference between European and Western, or European and American. So I teach Hong Kong style Wing Tsun, but I teach it in a modernized way. We emphasize a lot of Wing Tsun versus non-Wing Tsun sparring. Much more in Hong Kong, they do that as well, but it's a lot more just chi sao based sparring. Whereas, as you know, you're Wing Chun, the other person is non-Wing Chun. He's going to punch, try to go for a takedown, try to give you non-Wing Chun kicks and things like that, so that our students are constantly essentially facing someone that is not necessarily standing like a Wing Chun person, right? So I teach a Hong Kong style Wing Chun with the forms, the Dan Chi, the Chi Sao, the programs, all that stuff. But when it comes to the application, we focus on doing it in a very modern way. And the self-defense stuff, I put a little bit more into the forefront, how to get out of different holds and positions and things like that. And because of my training with people like Magno Gama from Renzo Gracie and also the Valenti brothers in Miami, the Valenti brothers especially because of their emphasis on self-defense, I definitely emphasize that a little bit more and improve. Wing Chun has some great ways of getting out of holds and stuff, but there were some little modifications that needed to be done to really make them a little bit more effective. And that was stuff that I got from like the Valenti brothers and stuff like that. So I have let's just say this, I have a modernized approach to teaching Hong Kong style Wing Chun.
Got it.
That's it.
Watch out.